time is what we want the most, but what we use the worst. That's a quote by William Penn. And I think I've been ruminating on this for a couple days now, maybe even a week. And I just thought that it would be helpful to share this with you guys. And maybe you find something helpful and informative about it. So, yeah, something that I like about this quote is the fact that a lot of people have regrets, right? They'll be like, yeah, time's flying by so quickly. I wish I could have done this thing, or I wish I could have done that. And the problem, just like the quote states, is we don't use time correctly. And I want to make it clear that there is no correct way to use time. It is extremely personalized. What might be good for one person, it might not be good for the other person. For example, I think a lot of people will think it's a waste of time for me to have this podcast and upload these videos, right? But for me, it's the other way around. Like, I love it. I love doing it for everybody and anybody that's listening, and I think it is a great use of my time. So extremely personalized. It is your job to find out what that thing is for you. What is a good way, what is a good spend of time, if you will, and what is a waste of time. And try to optimize for not doing the thing that you don't want to as much as you can. Now, there are some things that you can't work around, right? You can't just be like, okay, I'm not coming into work today because it's not going to be productive for me. I'm not going to like it. But I'll make an argument that if somebody really wants to do something, in most cases, there's a way around it. And speaking on the topic of regret, I think regret is something that everybody has and everybody will continue to have. But something that people don't understand about regret is, in my opinion, the way that regret works is you have to choose the regrets that you can live with rather than the ones you cannot live without. And what I mean by that, I'm going to actually say it one more time. You need to choose the regrets you can live with rather than the ones you can't live without. If you have two different options and two different things maybe you're pondering, right? And you're like vacillating on these different ideas that you have and you're not sure which one to pick. Think about which one you'll regret more. Will you regret the fact that you didn't go out with your friends that night, or are you going to regret the fact that you didn't, turn your homework in on time? And I know from on paper, this is a very basic example and kind of an example that doesn't always make sense, but I'm going to say if you have to turn in an assignment, right? You need this assignment, it's worth 15% of your grade, or you go hang out with your friends. Which one are you going to regret more? You missing out on that time with your friends that you can always have, or you getting a 0 on that assignment that's worth 15% of your grade. Now, this works both ways. Obviously, there are times where you have an assignment that's barely worth any points and your friends are doing something that you really want to do. Go and do that thing. I think as somebody who looks into the future, not like a magician or anything, but I always try to base my decisions off of what's going to be best for my future. I think if I have an assignment that is worth some points and I know in the future it's going to help me get the grade I want, I'm going to do it. Similarly, I know that if my friends are going out and they're doing something that I think is going to be super fun, memorable time in the future, it's going to be just something so fun to look back on, I'm going to do that as well. And the funny thing about that, let's pair those two together, right? Let's say the best version of one case, which is going to be our homework, and the best version on case number 2, which is hanging out with our friends, right? So stay with me now. So the first option, right? Let's say you are paired with an assignment that is going to be worth 15% of your grade, right? Huge assignment, this is worth a lot. And then you're paired with, on the other side, your friends are going out and they're doing something so fun and you want to do it so bad because it's going to just be such a good time in the future and you're going to love it. Take those two best case scenarios, or I guess in some case worst case scenarios as well, and think about which one you will regret more. Just think about this. This is very personal. I also want to add, like I mentioned, that everybody's different. So what might be good for one person might not be good for the other. There might be somebody who just wants to, slide by, get a C and pass a class. And there might be somebody who needs to get an A in the class to pass. And similarly, there might be somebody who needs to hang out with their friends. They want to make those memories so bad. And then there might be somebody who is a little bit more reserved. And, like he loves making those memories. He loves going out with his friends. It's awesome, but not tonight, So just something to think about. Choose the regrets you can live with rather than the ones you can't live without. You get to choose which regrets you can live with. The fact that, I remember that one day where I had that one homework assignment. I'm so happy I didn't do it because I had such a good time with my friends. Compared to the moments that you can't live without. Thank God I stayed in and I got that homework assignment done. That was worth 15% of my grade. Oh my God, that was huge. And now I got this good grade. I'm so happy I did that. Right? So you kind of turn on its head. It works both ways. And that's for you guys to decide. That's why I'm making this video. So hopefully it helps you in any way. Again, time is what we want most, but we use the worst. And looking back, I think a lot of people that are older have regrets in one way or another. And I'm not going to say you're never going to have regrets because that's unrealistic. Of course, you're going to have regrets, but the regrets that you choose to have are extremely important. You should be a regret optimization machine. You should be optimizing these regrets for what you know is going to be the best thing for you. Sorry, my mom called me. I'll call her back after this episode. Don't worry. I love you, mom. One thing that I know Marcus Aurelius talks about in his book Meditations is he says, out of the many things that he says, right? If you read that book, but he says, picture that you have lived your life, right? Like you're dead, you're on your deathbed, and think about all the things you haven't done yet. Now live it properly. Now I'm paraphrasing here. That's not exactly how he says it, but you get the point. So if you can imagine yourself, I think this is where meditation is very powerful. And some people don't understand this, which is totally fine. I understand because not everybody's really into that meditation. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm not extremely into it too. But this is from my experience what I realized. If you're able to pretend that you have lived your life, that you're dead, that you've done all these things with gratitude, and you even journal, write stuff down. That's where I think journaling comes in. Is very important. You're able to see that, wow, like I'm such a little thing on this planet. Like I don't matter at all, and I haven't lived my life properly and how I want to exactly. It's important to note that you can't just say, okay, I want to live my life properly. I want to go, I want to live the rest of my life in Malibu, right? Boom, that's it. I'm going to Malibu even though I have no money. My parents don't approve it, nothing. You can't just do that. But what I'm saying is understand where you want to go and the direction that you want to take because that is the most important thing for you. Once you understand yourself, and this is where my episodes come in, I talk about this a lot. Once you start to understand yourself more, you realize what works for you, what you like, what's going to be good for you, what's going to be beneficial to you in the future. And throughout that entire process, you invent yourself and maybe even reinvent yourself if you don't like who you are right now. The best thing and something that's so freeing to know is you can always reinvent yourself. One of my friends, Josh, shout out to you, Josh, he told me, he said, Gary Vee says all the time that Madonna reinvented herself 14 times, right? Nobody cares. The thing is, I think a lot of people think, oh my God, I'm this person. People see me as this person. If you really want to, and for the people that have really wanted to, they've changed themselves and people around them have gotten accustomed to it. A lot of people, and actually, I think people around me have a certain version of themselves that they are, right? And if they are to be in a different context, you might not take them as seriously, right? Like, for example, in college, like the guy that drinks all the time, right? He has so many friends, they all drink. And then he says one day, he's like, no, 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 I'm done drinking. He says that to his friends, right? And his friends are like, dude, shut up. You've drank every single weekend for the past 3 years. Like, dude, shut up, right? Let's go drink. And this guy goes, no, 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 I'm serious. I'm done drinking, right? And the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months, he doesn't drink. He reinvents himself and he shows the people around him that he's serious about this. So in the beginning, people are gonna be like, no, 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 like this in my brain, this is not who you are to me. So that's not gonna happen. Like forget about it, right? You drink with me. This is how we do it. Let's go. But then after time, they're gonna start to realize, okay, well this guy's serious about it. I gotta drop this and find somebody else to do that thing that we used to do together. Reinvent yourself. It's super important, especially if you don't like who you are. Couldn't recommend it enough. And I think that's one of the best things. That's where the gym comes in. That's where listening to podcasts, educating yourself is one of the best things you can do for yourself because you can kind of be the person that you want to. You lead the way. You are the captain of your ship. And I actually listened to something interesting that, what's his name? Gurwinder Bhogal said on Chris Williamson's podcast. He said, they were going over some quotes that Gurwinder wrote, and he said, a lot of people will take their favorite fiction character and display the same traits as them. So, in other words, some people will consume fiction and find who they want to be because their favorite character is that way. And you can do the same thing for yourself. Now, I'm not saying you're going to be some leader for the military or you're going to be this person who's going to save the world, but you can inherit, quote unquote, for those of you guys that are listening to this on audio, the same traits. Or in other words, you can pick up these things that you like, these favorable traits, and implement them into your life. You're not born, or I'm going to go back. You're born as a clean slate. So the way that you are has arisen because of the experiences that you have gone through as a person, right? You are your experiences. And for somebody that might have gone through experiences and maybe a little bit cynical or pessimistic, I encourage you to try to look at yourself and try to, if you can, if you're at that point, fix yourself because it's possible. And I know so many people who have done it around me. And I would say I have done it for some of my unfavorable traits as well. If I've noticed things around me, I'll give you a perfect example. I actually used to dislike people. And once I realized why I disliked them, I realized because these people are doing better than me. Seriously, like 100%. I used to be like, dude, I hate that guy so much. And then I remember telling one of my friends, and he'd be like, yeah, like I asked him about him. I don't like him either. And then I came home from school one day, and I was like, wait, why don't I like this person? And I realized, oh, he's doing better than me. He's this, he's that, and I'm none of that. So just going off track, just a quick tip for you guys. Chris Williamson says, you live with the stories of your decisions for far longer than the impacts of them. Everybody knows that one guy that's like, oh, I could have made it to the NFL. I hurt my knee. I could have made it to the NHL. I got poked in the eye. No shade on anybody that's been through that. And actually, if you have been through that, please fill out a podcast application. I'd love to have you on. But you live with the stories of your decisions for far longer than the impact of them. If you can resist the temporary, short-term pain that you might be going through, it's going to be so much more worth it in the long term. Now, the reason that this relates is because the quote, everybody wants time, but time is what we use the worst, is saying that we all have so many regrets because we want this thing, but in reality, we have it. We just don't use it correctly. So, what do you want? Well, the first thing we talked about is our regrets. And if you have these regrets, you're going to live bitter and you're going to wish that you could have done that thing. And this short-term discomfort that you went through would prompt you to become bitter in that way. Something that I think of comes off the top of my head. I don't know why, but for example, pretend you're trying to be a Marine, right? And you're going through Hell Week, which is, for those of you guys that don't know, the week where they, beat you, like make you do push-ups, run, like everything horrible. That's where they try to literally beat you mentally so you quit. That short-term discomfort in the macro, right? Like it's only a week, even though that week is definitely horrible, but 7 days short term, you don't want to be the person that's going to be telling others, yeah, I wanted to be a Marine or I could have done this thing, rather than the person that gets through that hardship, which I have videos on how to stay disciplined, how to do all that stuff. That's for a different topic. But you want to be the person that goes through these things and has those stories and experiences and realizes that with the time that they had, they spent doing the thing that they love. In this case, going to the Marines or going to the Army. And the more time you can spend pondering and actually understanding what you want, the better you will be in general because you're going to know what applies to you and what doesn't. I'll give you a perfect example. As somebody who has a podcast, right? I have guests on this show and I'm always looking for more opportunities, new people. And this guy that I wouldn't say work with, but I work alongside, he told me about how one of his friends that he knows, mutual, whatever, was this successful person. And he lined up with my podcast category. And I jumped to that opportunity. I'm like, hey, I have a podcast. I'd love to have him on, right? And although the result wasn't there, he never got back to me. But that's not important. I'm saying I realized that I had this opportunity because I know what I wanted. I know I do this podcast. I know the podcast guests that I want. I know everything that aligns with what I am and who I am and what I stand for. As somebody who knows in the future they're going to try to brand their product and start a clothing brand, right? You know that if you meet somebody and he says, "Oh yeah, I do wholesaling for clothing companies, for smaller creators." You're gonna know, hey, let me get your contact information. That's something I'm really interested in. I'm actually trying to start a clothing brand myself. Compared to the person who starts a clothing brand down the line after having met the guy. So I know it's a little bit confusing. I'm just gonna explain this really quickly and then I'll wrap up. So pretend you are somebody. We'll make this simple. Pretend you want to start a soccer business, right? For the guy early on that's interested in soccer and he's thinking about what the future holds for him, he's gonna think, oh, I actually really want to start a soccer business, right? I want it to be this, or I want it to be that. And sometimes it's even gonna be like, I don't know what it's gonna be about, but a soccer business is something that I dream of. Then in the future, he runs into this coach and he's like, yeah, I actually, one of the things I do is I help business owners, especially soccer business owners, help start their company. And you're going to be like, no, wait, that's actually exactly what I want to do, right? That's so specific. It works perfectly. And then you're going to know you're going to keep that person in mind. You're going to get his contact because you know he's going to be helpful for you in the future. And it's not even transactional. It's not like, oh, you do this, I do that for you. But hey, like, if I need it, I can get this guy, I can text him, and he'd be more than happy to help. Compared to the guy who meets this soccer coach, right? And he goes, "Yeah, I help business owners start in soccer." And he's like, doesn't think much of it, right? He's like, "That's pretty cool." And then in the future, he goes, "I think I'm gonna start a soccer business. Oh, I wish I got that guy's contact information. I wish I took that chance." But the reality is, you're gonna take chances, and you're gonna have the least amount of regret once you really understand yourself and the path that you want to go down. And once you're ready to go down that path, you and to understand your mindset, how to not procrastinate, how to stay disciplined. And that's why I encourage you guys to listen to this podcast, whether you're listening on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever. My main goal is to help you guys, and I don't have any sponsors. I don't make money off of these videos, so I encourage you guys to listen to more if there's something you're interested in. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it, and I will catch you guys soon.